Stand back up again. For some, for the kids, that might be a good thing to make them go all the way back down and jump back up again and burn a little bit of that energy, make them sit. But there are others that getting down and then back up again, that's a little more of a challenge. So out of respect to those, I tried to jump up here quickly and make it so you didn't have to go all the way down. 1 Kings chapter 17, I'm going to start reading in verse 1. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord, for he went and dwelt by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank of the brook. And it came to pass after a while that the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. So he arose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering sticks, and he called to her and said, Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel, that I may drink. And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. And she said, As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me there of a little cake first, and bring it unto me, and after make for thee and thy son. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord sendeth rain upon the earth. And we'll stop right there for now. Let's have a word of prayer. Lord, I want to thank you for the time that we can have in your word tonight, Lord, in your house. Pray that you'll bless this time, Lord. I pray that you will speak through me, Lord, and help us to hear from you tonight, Lord. I pray this in your name. Amen. 1 Kings 17, 18, kind of this stretch through 1 Kings is some of kind of my favorite to read and to study and to look at in the Word of God. So I'll say that right off the bat. The majority of the message we're going to get is going to be out of chapter 18. Chapter 17 kind of lays the groundwork for it, and I'm going to use the introduction this evening. I'm going to kind of use chapter 17 to help us build that, and then we'll get to where we're going with the message. Elijah in chapter 17, where we're at, Elijah is not exactly a liked person. Where we started reading, he proclaims the drought and the famine that are coming to the land. The guy who does that, the guy who says, God has just told me you're going to have a famine and you're going to have a drought and it's going to be hard and people are going to die and there's going to be all the struggles, that's not exactly someone that everyone is going to love. He's not going to be voted most popular pastor in the area or anything like that. It's just not gonna go well, especially since it came true. That's now a problem. We talk about here in Western Washington about getting sick of the rain, but if we went and had a drought here where you had no rain for years and years and years, you're not going to like it very much. And Elijah is the one who proclaimed that God is sending this. And worse than that, for him, the king already didn't like him. More than doesn't like him, the king already wanted Elijah dead. Now, again, that's not a good spot to be in. This is a system, when he's alive, this is a system where there's no checks and balances in this political system. If the king wants you dead, it just kind of means you're a dead man walking. It's just a matter of time. You read the passages leading up to this, and as you get into 18, it kind of, we'll get to this in a bit because it mentions it again. They're searching everywhere for him. They're not searching everywhere for him because the king just likes him so much and wants to have him over for dinner. No, it's a matter of the king. The king hates him, and he has his armies out searching for him. It's just, in that sort of system, it is just a matter of time before they find him, and the king has him killed. That's why the verse that we read, as soon as he proclaims this famine, the Lord has him hide by the brook. Yes, that is to provide for his food and water through this drought, but it's just as much to provide for his safety from the king. Later, as he comes to the widow's house, I can only imagine, and I think I'm on pretty safe ground with this. I can only imagine that this man, the man who the king hates and wants dead, the man who proclaimed a drought, I can only imagine him coming and staying at your house puts you in danger too. I mean, this is, in essence, a fugitive staying in your home. The king already wants him dead. If he finds out that you're housing this man, it could very well mean that you're going to die as well. And at first, I'm studying this, and I thought, well, maybe it's a matter of she is a woman of faith, and was willing to take that risk for the prophet. And I do think that is that's a part of it as you read chapter 17 and we come into it. God has prepared her, so I do think that's a part of it, that perhaps she's a woman of faith and she just trusted God enough that none of the rest mattered and that she was going to lean on God. I think that's a part of it. I don't think that's all of it. Remember, she was going to die without him. Where we read, says she's gathering 2 sticks so that she can make a final meal for her and her son, and then their plan is we're going to eat and we're going to starve to death. I'm not sure that I'm going to go ahead and make something for the prophet first. I'm not sure that this was an act of faith by her as much of an act of desperation. I mean, I'm going to die anyways. Why not? I mean, at least dying by the hand of the king might be quicker and less painful than starving to death. Who knows? Maybe he's right and this will work. But either way, she houses him, and we know if you continue through chapter 17, we ended in, I believe it was verse 14 or 15 where we stopped, but if you continue through chapter 17, shortly after that, her son gets sick and dies, and Elijah, through God's power, brings him back, and all of this is going on. And that brings us to chapter 18, and I know that is kind of a lot of background in a short amount of time, but I want us to use that to kind of see the spot that Elijah is in. He's in hiding. This is not a time, yes, God has done what he proclaimed, but it's not like this is a victorious time in Elijah's life. It's not like this is a time where everything is going well and, he's on this mountaintop and things are just working great. No, this is a time of hiding because the king wants you dead. But then as chapter 18 starts, things sort of shift. I have 4 things tonight I want us to see from 1 Kings chapter 18. And like I said, we're going to kind of read through some of chapter 18 as we go through this message tonight. 4 things I want to see out of 1 Kings chapter 18. The first thing I want to see is God's call. Look at chapter 18, verse 1 and 2. It came to pass, after many days, that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. And Elijah went to show himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. And it goes on from there. Now, let's think about this call for a second. Remembering the situation that Elijah's in. His call is, I want you to go to the very king who's looking for you right now so that he can kill you. We often will read the Bible and we'll see the call of God and we'll think, boy, that's challenging. Boy, that's a hard call. I don't think you get much harder than this. Oh, this guy's looking for you to kill you. Go to him. I have a message I want you to give that guy. Go to the king that's seeking your life. Can you imagine if it were you, the reaction you would have? I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Moses. Moses had a very similar job that he was told to do. You've been in hiding so that this king won't find you and kill you, and now God says, go find him. I think if we were honest, Every one of us, if we did not vocalize it, we would at least be thinking, you're joking, right, God? If I go see him, he's going to kill me. I can't go see Ahab. Can't someone else go deliver this message? Maybe I can send a servant and have that servant go give the message from me to Ahab. Would that be acceptable, God? Because we do that sort of thing sometimes, don't we? God tells us to do something, and it's, well, let me find my acceptable alternative. And God, can't this be okay? That I can just send my servant instead, and he can go deliver that message, because maybe he won't kill the servant. Or surely there is someone else that's willing to go that isn't quite so hated. But that wasn't the call. The call was go to Ahab. This would have been a call that is terrifying. You've heard the phrase, I looked fear in the face and laughed. That's what this would be. I want you to walk right up to the person who wants to kill you. That's a scary thing. It's not something. It's not something we normally do. You think about it. If someone is mad at you, you typically don't walk right up to that person. You give them some space. You don't always just go and confront that person. I've told you this example before. I used to work with a guy who we very lovingly referred to as Crazy Dave. And Crazy Dave, when I worked with him, had just recently got out of prison for murdering his wife, which is why we lovingly referred to him as Crazy Dave. And when I worked with him, and I won't give details of how, he had no problem telling details of how, and it added to why we called him crazy. But when I worked with him, he still had significant anger problems. We'll just put it that way. My dad knows some of the stories. Bo and I both worked with him at different times. He was the guy, if something would go wrong, or if he got mad at you, his solution was to grab his claw hammer and chase you around the house swinging at it, screaming that he was going to murder you. It was something that happened not every day, but at least 3-4 times a week. And he was serious, trying to catch you with the claw of his framing hammer. So when Dave started yelling, I didn't walk right up to him and ask, well, Dave, what's the problem? Let's discuss this. No, I got a head start running. I got some distance. I wanted some space. When someone's mad at you, you don't walk up to them and start a conversation. You typically try to walk away, or you avoid that person. You don't go to them. That's exactly what God wanted Elijah to do. That would be a terrifying call. That would have been a call that required a whole lot of trust. You're not going to do that. You're not going to obey that call unless you trust that God is going to take care of you through it. You're not going to walk up to the man that wants to kill you and say, well, hey, God has a message for you, unless you know God's not going to let you kill me. And you think about it, Elijah had reason to trust God. You think about just in the time of the drought, the way that God had provided, that he had kept him from danger from Ahab. That in itself is no easy task when you're talking about staying and hiding from the king. The king has all sorts of resources at his disposal, and all sorts of people who are going to be reporting back to him. The fact that God kept him safe from danger from the king, that's no little thing. And then the fact that God provided for his needs at the brook, and in a way that only God could do. He sent ravens to bring him food. That's something that only God could have thought up and only God could have made. I've preached out of this passage before and given this example. You think about it, a raven, a crow, if you will kill each other over a crumb. A raven bringing food to supply for a man, that's just not in their nature. The only way that works is it is obviously God. There is no way that Elijah sat there by the brook being fed twice a day by ravens that he could think, boy, what a coincidence. Twice a day, every day, they bring me food. No, it was obviously God. He had reason to trust that God has provided for me through this. when you get to as he goes to the widow's house and he made the meal and the oil not to run out. The widow tells him, I have just enough for one meal for my son and I. And again, I love the way that things happen. I have, just enough for my son and I to have one last meal and die. And his response is, great, make me some first. But then God makes it so that never runs out. When God provides in these sorts of ways, it makes it so Elijah has reason to trust that if he does what God tells him to do, God will take care of him. God has, I hate to use this term, but for us I think it makes sense. God has earned Elijah's trust. And I say I hate to use that term because God doesn't need to earn our trust, but often we act as though he does. But God had earned Elijah's trust. And it's important that we see that tonight because I'll be referring back to it a few times throughout the message. Elijah trusting God plays a huge role in this entire passage. He knew that he could trust God. Second thing I see in this passage is Elijah's confidence. Chapter 18, look at verse 7. I'm going to read verse 7 through 15. As Obadiah was in the way, behold, Elijah met him, and he knew him, and fell on his face, and said, Art thou my Lord Elijah? And he answered, I am. Go tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And he said, What have I sinned, that thou wouldest deliver thy servant into the hand of Ahab to slay me? As the Lord thy God liveth, there is no nation or kingdom whither my Lord hath not sent to seek thee. And when they said he is not there, he took an oath of the kingdom and nation that they found thee not. Remember me talking about the resources at his disposal? There's not a nation or kingdom that he has not searched looking for Elijah to kill him and made them swear an oath that he wasn't there. Verse 11, Now thou sayest, Go tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here, and it shall come to pass as soon as I am gone from thee, that the Spirit of the Lord shall carry thee whither I know not. And so when I come and tell Ahab, and he cannot find thee, he shall slay me. But I, thy servant, fear the Lord from my youth. Was it not told my Lord what I did when Jezebel slew the prophets of the Lord, how I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water? And now thou sayest, Go tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here, and he shall slay me. And Elijah said, As the Lord of hosts liveth, behold, whom I stand, I will surely show myself unto him today. Again, Elijah's confidence. This is not a spot where confidence would be easy. It's not a spot where confidence is going to be easy. But Elijah made a bold stand. I mean, he's bold in just going. He goes to Obadiah, who is a servant of Ahab, whose job has been searching for Elijah to bring him back. He says so in verse 10, that there's no nation that he hasn't searched for Elijah. I mentioned that trust in the Lord earlier. Just going would have taken some confidence. It's a bold move. Coming out of hiding would have taken some confidence in God. But then, bold in his words. When he goes to Obadiah and tells him, Elijah is here. And when Obadiah tells him, that you're here, but if I go and tell Ahab that you're here and he comes and you're not, well, he's gonna kill me. And in essence, Elijah tells him, I'm gonna wait right here. Not going anywhere. You go get Ahab. I'm gonna wait right here. That's a bold statement. You go get the man who wants to kill me and tell him I'll be waiting for him. Because I'm not going anywhere. It's the type of stance that Elijah's taking here. I know you want to kill me, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere until I see Ahab. It takes some confidence to stand in front of Ahab. But also bold in his demanding that. You think about this, not many people tell the king, this is where we meet. I mean, normally it's going to be the king giving orders. This is the king who we just read is going to different nations and kingdoms asking them, is Elijah here? No. Swear an oath to me that he's not here. He can demand kingdoms to swear an oath that they haven't seen Elijah. And Elijah says, yeah, that king, he can meet me here. You don't do that very often. Elijah's saying, oh, this is where I am. You go get the king and bring him to me. I mean, that would be like, you calling up the White House and saying, I want to talk to the president. Tell him I'm going to be right here. That's not going to happen. You can wait as long as you want. He's not coming. About the best you can hope for is Secret Service might show up because they're going to think you're some sort of weird threat. But not the president. You still won't get to meet with him. You're just going to be locked up in some deep, dark hole somewhere, and Brother Hohen Street can visit you someday. Now, this move by Elijah, that's bold. It's confident. It's not just bold in his going or bold in his words. It's bold in his proclamation. When Ahab comes, he tells the king it's going to rain. Now, here, that wouldn't be such an amazing thing. I've said it since I was a kid that I would love to be a weather person in the Northwest, because if you get up every day and say there's a 50% chance of rain, if you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, no one cares because they actually get a sunny day. It's kind of a win-win situation. Saying it's going to rain here or that rain is coming here is no big deal. But saying it's going to rain in a place where they've had no rain, and if you will, no forecast of rain, that's bold. Especially because it's not like, as we'll see later, it's not like Elijah had looked at the sky and seen that the clouds are building. It's not like, how you can smell a fresh rain right before it happens. It's not like he's outside going, oh, you smell that, rain's coming, tell the king. No, it's not like he could smell that fresh rain, made his stand. Remember, it wasn't until after this proclamation that he, and we'll get here in a minute, but it's not until after this proclamation that he climbs the mountain and starts to pray for it and sends his servant to the top. And after time after time after time of going to the top, finally saw a cloud. Now, he didn't say this because you could look at the sky and obviously see rain was coming, but he was confident. You just place yourself in a spot that if you're wrong, you're more than likely a dead man. The only thing that was keeping Ahab from killing him right now is that he's proclaiming the drought is over. So if you're wrong, you're dead. You know why he could come to Ahab and say that with confidence? Because God told him that it was coming in verse 1 and 2. Remember, that was the message that God wanted him to deliver. We've already seen that God had proved that he could and would take care of him. God already proved himself to Elijah. He had already taken care of him. He had already provided. He had already kept Elijah safe. So Elijah knew that if God said it, it's going to happen. I don't have to have other proofs. God said it, it's going to happen. We see Elijah's call. We see his confidence. Third thing I want us to see is Elijah's confrontation. Look at chapter 18, verse... it's in 17 through 40. I'm not going to have us read that whole thing right now, but we'll read a little bit of it starting in verse 17. Came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam. Now therefore send and gather to me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel, and gathered the prophets together unto Mount Carmel. And Elijah said unto all the people, and Elijah came unto all the people, and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. Then said Elijah unto the people, even I only remain a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God that answereth by fire, let him be God. And all the people answered and said, It is well spoken. And again, it continues on all the way through verse 40. He meets up with Ahab. The first thing he tells him is, Gather me all the people. Oh, and I want you to bring all the false prophets. We're going to just start this thing off before I, really even address the people. We'll just start this thing off by proving who the real God is. We're just going to remove all doubt. We'll have a little competition. I had I won't mention names. I had someone right before service say, I make everything a competition. It's biblical. I get it from Elijah. It's a good thing. I'm just kidding. No, but Elijah, well, we're going to have a competition here between your gods and mine. And then once we determine who the real God is, well, then we can go from there. Once there's no longer a dispute about who is God, then we can move on, and we know what happens. Again, I didn't have us read the whole passage, but he tells the false prophets to start, and they prepare their sacrifice and cry to their God, and nothing happens, and they cut themselves, and they beg to their God, and all of this stuff, and Elijah starts to mock them. Well, maybe he's asleep, and you just need to yell louder. He's busy, he's on a trip, just yell louder, which you want to talk bold. It's one against all the prophets. He uses the number 450, but that's just the prophets of Baal. I mean, you're talking one against that minimum 450, and he's mocking them. That's what he does. And finally, after hours of this going on, he stops and says, okay, guys, it's my turn. And he not only prepares the sacrifice, but he soaks it with water, and God sends down fire to devour it. And then if that isn't enough, he's proved his God now, and he says, okay, step 2, we proved who God is, now go kill all those false prophets. It's a pretty major confrontation. I mean, you read a story like this, or a passage like this, and it kind of makes you, I don't know, kind of makes, at least maybe me, maybe I'm the only one, it kind of makes you feel ashamed to say, well, I don't want to witness because I don't like confrontation. I don't want to talk to that person because I don't like confrontation. This confrontation that Elijah faced makes all of ours put together look like nothing. I mean, I probably won't have a major confrontation with 450 plus in my entire lifetime, let alone in one afternoon. And in it, he really confronts multiple groups. He confronts the entire nation. Verse 21, we saw it, that he brings them all together. Elijah came unto all the people and said, how long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. The people answered him not a word. He's confronting the entire nation that he told to gather, questioning what they believe. People get pretty antsy when you start to question what they believe. That's how he starts this thing off. And then he takes it from there and he questions the prophets. I'm not going to have us read it again, but verse 23 and 24 is where we saw that. You call on your gods, I'll call on my God, and the one who answers, let him be God. Goes from there and confronts Ahab. Now that once all this is done, and I know we stopped before this, but once all this is done, he finally turns to Ahab, and we've gotten all of this out of the way. Now let me talk to the king. Now that there is no question who God is, now that there is no question who really answers, he turns to the king and delivers his message. What a day. I mean, this has been quite the day. You know why Elijah was willing to stand in the face of all of that? You know why he's willing to take on the risk and the challenge of all that? Because he knew that what God told him to do was right. It leads back to that trust. He knew what God said was true. Listen, if Elijah wasn't sure that God was real, he would not have said, bring all the people and the king and the false prophets and we'll battle this out. If Elijah was not confident that when he prayed, God would send down fire and devour that altar, there's no way he would have asked for this. No, if Elijah had any question in his mind, if God could really follow through on what he said, he would have wanted to downplay this. If I have to meet with the king, let's let it just be he and I. Maybe then I have a chance to run away. Some sort of place where I might be able to escape. He would have said, let's do this one-on-one. That way I at least have a chance. If he fails in this situation, there's nothing. It's like when it was over and the people captured and killed all the false prophets. That would have been his fate, but he was confident he was right because he knew without a doubt that God was the true God. That's why he's willing to take this stand. That's why and have this massive confrontation. The last thing I want us to see tonight is this, and this is really where it all kind of boils down. All of this is no coincidence. Chapter 18, look at verse 41 through 46. 41 through 46, and Elijah said unto Ahab, Get thee up, eat and drink, for there is a sound of abundance of rain. Now, again, remember, not a cloud in the sky. There's the sound of abundance of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he cast himself down upon the earth and put his face between his knees and said to his servant, Go up now, look toward the sea. And he went up and looked, and said, There is nothing. And he said, Go again 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time that he said, Behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hand. He said, Go up, say unto Ahab, Prepare thy chariot, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel, and the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. Now, he tells Ahab it's going to rain, and it's not just going to rain, it's going to flood. You better get home because your chariot is going to get stuck in the mud. And he says this when there's no clouds in the sky. The passage that we just read tells us that. It's a clear blue sky. He says a flood is coming. You better hustle home. And guess what? It rained. Not by coincidence. It rained by design. Remember, that was God's message all along. He knew it was going to rain regardless of a lack of clouds. Because God is the one who makes the rain. Clouds don't matter. It was by design. It was by prayer. Elijah tells Ahab, to go because it's going to rain. And immediately he goes and prays. I think this prayer is, if you will, a prayer of desperation. God, you said it would happen. I just told the king it would happen, so I really need it to happen. And I love the situation. He prays and sends a servant to go look. The Bible tells us that he went to the top and then sends his servant higher. Prays, sends a servant to the top, comes back, no, there's nothing. So Elijah prays some more and sends his servant to go again, and he comes back down. No, there's still nothing. And he prays and he sends his servant to go to the top again, and he looks. No, there's still not. 7 times this happens. Maybe this is my imagination. Maybe it's because of listening to my dad preach when I was a kid. I have to think the servant is getting exhausted. I mean, he's running up and down a hill. I don't know how tall this thing is. But the Bible tells us that Elijah went to the top and then sends his servant higher. I don't know how tall this thing is, but a guy who loves spending time in the mountains, going to the top of any mountain, it's exhausting. I mean, it wears you out, let alone 7 times. I mean, that's a lot of work. I've a few times now gotten permits and gone to the top of Mount St. Helens. The first time that I summited St. Helens, it was with a friend who I hadn't seen since, I don't know, I was probably 8. Was the last time I had seen him, but, follow him on social media, and so we kind of sort of stayed a little connected. At least I knew he hiked also. So, haven't seen someone in 20 years. What else are you going to do? Let's go climb a mountain together. So I sent him a message, and we worked it out and went and did this. And we got together, and the weather was awful. I'm talking like freezing rain. We both had icicles hanging off our coats. When we started, it was beautiful and sunny, so he went in a pair of shorts. By the time we got to the top, he had icicles hanging off the hair of his legs, and he was walking up it going, I am the only idiot in shorts up here. What am I doing? It was really funny. We got to the top. Wind is blowing like crazy. You couldn't see as far as from me to the front row. Well, the reason you climb Mount St. Helens is everyone raves about the views at the top. There was none. It was clouds. But we made it and, took a few pictures of the 4 feet you could see and, of each other up there and started our descent. And about an hour on our way down, the wind came and blew all the clouds away, and you could look at the top and see it was beautiful and sunny. And I don't know, a little bit crazy. I looked at Aaron and said, what do you say we go back up? I mean, we have time. we could do this. And the response I got back was, you would have to offer at least $1,000 for us to start this conversation. Had no interest at all in going back up a second time. This servant of Elijah's is on summit number 7. I mean, I have to think he is exhausted. Finally, the servant comes back and tells him, there's a cloud. It's over the water. It's the size of a man's hand. It's not much, but it's more than we had. Please let it be enough. I have to think the servant's thinking, please, Elijah, I don't think I can go an 8th time. Let this be enough. Please don't make me climb again. And we know what happens from there. Servant is sent, this poor servant, who's sent 7 times to summit a mountain. Perfect. Go run to the king now. At least you get to go downhill. It's a little easier, I guess. But, sent to go tell Ahab, hurry home, so that the rain doesn't stop you and the drought is over. And I can see someone tonight. We go through all this. And, yeah, this is great. And that's wonderful that this happened to Elijah. What does this have to do with me? Okay, this is what God did years ago. And that's great that Elijah trusted God. It's great he made that stand. It's great that God delivered. What is that for me? Here it is. Here's how I want to try to parallel this to us a little bit. God has a call in your life also. A call that oftentimes to us seems ridiculous. It may even seem impossible. I mean, the call that God had on Elijah's life, this seemed like, God, there is just no way this can work. If I go try to talk to the king, he's just going to kill me. I'm never going to have a chance to give your message. Now, God has a call on your life, too, that may to us seem ridiculous and impossible. But just like Elijah, you can have confidence. You can know that he is there. You can know that he'll protect you. You can know that he will provide for you. You can know that his way is right. You can have confidence in a confrontation because you can know he is true. He has proved it so many times before. And you can know that his plan is by design, that it is blessed by prayer. Here's the question, or at least how God spoke to me through all this and how I kind of want to pose it to you this evening. Will I react like Elijah? Will you? We react like Elijah. You know what the easy thing for Elijah would have been to have done? The easy thing would have been to stay in hiding. The easy thing would have been to say, you know what, God, I'm pretty comfortable here sitting in the widow's house eating cakes. It's not so bad. The easy thing would have been to tell God, God, you don't know what you're asking of me. I can't do that. I'm too scared to do that. God, you know the dangers. You know the king wants me dead. I think I'll just stay here and wait it out. That's not what he did. Elijah wasn't about just doing the easy thing. We can see examples of that. He isn't exactly known for, his just taking the easy way. With my kids, my sons especially, when things have been hard, and like any kid, things get hard or they get hurt or whatever, and a kid wants to give up. And I don't know, it's just been my thing. I tell my sons, we're McKenzies. We don't give up when things are hard. It's what we just do, hard things. That's just part of life. That's Elijah here. He didn't back down from hard things. Not because Elijah was something special, but because Elijah trusted God, and he stepped out. So what are you going to do? When God calls, are you going to take God's way or the easy way? I'll just point this out quickly, and I'll be done this evening. Because Elijah took God's way, because he took God's way, the drought ended. The rains came immediately. Because Elijah took God's way, he was able to come out of hiding. He was no longer enemy number one. And because Elijah took God's way, a nation turned back to God. They destroyed their false gods, and they turned back to God. Perhaps, and this is just, I'll end with this thought. This is just a perhaps to provoke some thought. Perhaps what our nation needs is enough Christians who will decide, I'm done taking the easy way. I'm going to take God's way. Let's pray. Lord, I want to thank you for the examples that we can see in your word. The example that we can see in Elijah of a man who trusted you despite the fears, despite the dangers, despite the confrontation that was in front of him, simply trusted, knowing that you could and would take care of him. Because of it, a nation is turned around. Lives changed because Elijah wasn't willing to just sit and take the easy way, but trusted you enough to take your way. Lord, I pray that you will, Lord, help us as a church, as individuals, to decide I'm not going to be content just taking the easy way, sitting on the sidelines hoping someone else will do it because I'm scared or it's hard or it's difficult. But I'm going to step up and I'm going to go God's way. Lord, we have no idea the lives that will be affected when we surrender to and follow your will. It's in your name. Amen.
With your heads bowed and your eyes closed tonight, will you come